So I live in a pretty quiet part of my city in a small two-bedroom basement apartment with my roommate, who's gone for the summer. I stayed here and worked during the summer. I do not get out all that often and don't know many people, as I moved to the area 2 years ago. Just this last Sunday night, I was doing my usual gaming with some friends I had met on the internet. Good friends of mine that I had known since I was 16. When I get this call from a private number now, I rarely get phone calls from people I know. Normally, communication is done by just texting. So I pick up, and what sounds like a man maybe in his early to mid-40s picks up the phone. The conversation went as follows. "Hello," he replies with, "Hey, who's this?" Who's this?" I reply. "It's Randy. Sorry, Randy, you've got the wrong number." And then I hang up. About 10 minutes later, he calls me again, and so I thought, he must have accidentally dialed my number again. So I ignored it and thought nothing of it, continuing enjoying my time with my friends playing some Diablo 3. By now, it is about 9 p.m. Around 10 p.m., I get the call again. Being the not really giving a shit kind of guy, I just ignored it again. After all, I do not know anyone and have not known anyone in my lifetime by the name of Randy. Pretty logical not to answer. I would just be wasting my time. About an hour and a half passes by. It's about 11 p.m. now. I get the call yet again. So I answered, and literally the call goes exactly the same way as before. With one problem, I think I ended up saying too much. I add to the conversation. "Sorry, you really have the wrong number. I don't know any Randys." "Oh, you don't know me," he replies. "That's right." Here I'm thinking he finally gets it and he's going to stop calling. But then he says this. "Well then, I guess I'm going to stop by, and I think you'll get a pretty good idea of who I am when I'm done with you." At this point, I was instantly freaked out, and I just hung up. I was getting kind of scared, but I got a grip on myself, and just figured that he must have beef with someone, and really doesn't get that he's calling the wrong person. A few minutes later, I hear a vehicle pull into my driveway. Since I live in the basement and there is a window facing the driveway, his headlights were shining right in. I figured it was my neighbor coming home from his night shift at the hospital. I live in a triplex. A few minutes pass by and the lights are still on. Quickly, it all came flooding back into my mind. It's him, I thought, and my stomach began to knot, and I felt so afraid. My hands began to tremble. I peeked through the curtains and watched the car for quite some time. I couldn't tell if there was anyone inside or not, since the headlights were bright. He doesn't leave, so I called my brother who lives not far from me. I told him what happened, and he said, "Okay, stay in your house, keep the door locked. I'm coming to get you, man." Now, my brother is a pretty intimidating guy if you've never met him before. 6'4", broad shoulders, big badass looking beard, etc. He comes over, I let him in, and he says, "There's nobody in the car, yet the headlights are on." I pack up some things, and we head off. He was kind enough to let me stay at his place for a few days until I felt okay. Upon returning to my apartment today, the same vehicle is in my driveway. I started freaking out, but there's nobody in the car. I noticed blankets on all the seats. For some reason, I looked in the opposite direction, right at my garbage bin, and it is my bin. It is labeled, it has the words, "It's me," written on it. I quickly went into my apartment and locked the door and took a shower. When I got out, the car was gone. Now I'm writing this. Honestly, I'm pretty fucking scared right now. Small update, nothing more creepy has been happening all that much. Mostly just paranoia and anxiety getting to me as I try to sleep. I went back to my brother's for the weekend last week, and I came home for Sunday night. Things were okay. I slept perfectly fine with little to no anxiety. I was still a little paranoid at random sounds. Sleep was great until about 1 a.m. when my neighbors thought it was necessary to have some pretty wild sex. Lots of thumping and moaning and screaming. It was somewhat comical and surprisingly didn't bother me that much. Just the notion of another human being's voice, as erotic as it was comforting in comparison to dead silence and random noises that drive me crazy.
It started in mid-ninth grade. I wasn't especially popular, so I never bothered to silence my phone in class. But that day, I got a call from Restricted and got in some trouble. When I left class, I saw a voicemail. I naturally assumed it was a prank call. The voicemail was mostly in Spanish, with some I love yous thrown in. Since it was restricted, I ruled out a wrong number and assumed it was a very lame prank call. I was actually a pretty lonely kid, though, so I appreciated the attention. Just as I finished checking the call, I got another. I asked him who it is, and he doesn't seem to understand. I tried asking in Spanish as well. He switched entirely to broken English and more or less just replied in yeses or nos and intrigued sounds, and always, very genuinely, said he loved me. I ran with the lame prank call idea, but the calls never let up, and he never said much besides listening to what I say, responding with some sort of sound and saying how much he loved me. As time went on, I decided it couldn't be a student. This man called at all hours, during class, during dinner, while I slept, etc. Sometimes I'd get over like 50 calls a day at seemingly random intervals just every few minutes. Sometimes, naturally, I'd get angry. I'd scream and threaten him. I'd say things like, "No lames! Policia! No quiero, por favor! Pere! No más!" He'd just plead that he loved me. Mostly, though, I grew accustomed to it. I'd usually ignore it and delete the voicemails. Also, I was pretty depressed during those times, so sometimes I'd just answer and talk. He didn't seem to understand, so I'd just cry to him sometimes. As usual, he'd just respond with, "Oh, yes, I love you," and the like. I eventually made friends and got a boyfriend. They asked about the calls. I'd joke that it was my weird Spanish stalker. They, at first, assumed it was a prank. I let them speak to the guy. They quickly thought it was very creepy and told him to never call back. He always did. And yes, by then my phone was almost always on silent. After 2 years, the calls slowed down. Maybe I'd get 1 or 2 a week or something. But then it started picking up again, and I had had enough. I went back to anger. I, in my best Spanish, told him to back off. I went vulgar. I went loud. I told him this was in no way welcome and that I'd make sure he got in trouble. I told him it was stalking, etc. Nothing changed. No reaction more than a pouting sound and insisting that he loves me. I found a free trial of some app thing that unblocks a blocked number. Something where it calls them back after they hang up. 800 numbers use it or something. Well, I found his number, and it had a familiar area code, but no number I recognized. They lived perhaps 30 minutes away from me, outside of my school district, though. Creepy. Well, I called him. He picked up and didn't say anything. I told him I found his number and that I'd call the cops on him. I didn't. Then I blocked him. I posted the number on Facebook, asked if anyone knew him. I offered rewards. I went through everyone's contact list I knew. I never found out who it was. I don't think I'd ever met him. No idea how he got my number or why he kept calling for years. Really, he must not have had a job or anything, or slept much. Well, this all was years ago, but I still think it's a really weird, unresolved thing. Recently, I asked my boyfriend, who knows Spanish, to call the number. I went back through my Facebook posts to find it. A lady answered. As soon as my boyfriend spoke, she said not to call and hung up. He called back, and she just picked up and hung up the phone. Weird. So, any idea what that was all about? Any similar stories? A hysterical elderly woman had just woken up and found her 78-year-old husband unresponsive. As a dispatcher, I quickly obtained priority information, inquired if he felt cool to the touch, which only heightened her panic, leading to uncontrollable yelling. Calming her down, I began to provide CPR instructions. It's important to note that once I had a preliminary assessment of the emergency and confirmed the caller's location, the appropriate units were dispatched. Our workstations comprised 2 personal computers, a private branch exchange phone system, and a dispatch terminal. The county maintained a database of valid residential addresses, which auto-populated on the dispatch terminal. The local phone companies managed customer caller records, visible on the private branch exchange personal computer. In emergencies, time efficiency is critical. Any possible improvements to speed up processes are valued. There was a function allowing transfer of address information from caller ID and private branch computer to the dispatch terminal with a keystroke, saving precious seconds from call initiation to dispatch. When a call came in and the county database lacked the address, the system sought the nearest match. Approaching the 9-minute mark, a sense of concern gripped me. Glancing at the map, I realized the fire station wasn't far, so first responders should have already arrived. By now, the woman had abandoned CPR due to exhaustion. Just in time, I switched to the fire radio frequency on the secondary speaker and overheard a paramedic requesting confirmation of the address from the dispatcher, as they were at the given address but found no emergency there. My heart sank. I interrupted the caller's devastating sobs and gently asked, "Ma'am, may I confirm that you are at..." It was at this moment that I comprehended my mistake. The caller ID information matched precisely what had been transferred to the dispatch terminal, with a single difference: road instead of drive. I had unintentionally dispatched an ambulance to the wrong address due to my lapse in judgment. The caller's address wasn't in the county database, but the closest match was, situated on the opposite side of the county. I was certain they matched before I sent the call for dispatch. Truly, I swear, 100%. Once I recognized the error, I rectified the address and dispatched the correct units. I ended the call at 7:02 a.m., right as emergency medical services reached the scene, 17 minutes after her initial plea for assistance. I still can't shake the feeling that my momentary lapse in judgment was what cost someone's life. When I got into my car, the weight of it all hit me, and I couldn't hold back my emotions. I felt responsible for his death. During the following shift, my colleagues could see the toll it took on me. They offered words of encouragement, stating there was nothing more I could have done considering his age, and various other comforting phrases. That day, I received my first official corrective action, a write-up, for not confirming the caller's location, my first major mistake in over 6 years. I became apprehensive about answering the phone and would often delay, becoming the last to pick up. 2 days later, I made the difficult decision to resign. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, type "unknown callers suck" in the comments so we know who made it this far. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos twice a week.